Quantum speed reading promises an incredible shortcut, teaching children to read and comprehend 100,000 words in just 5 minutes. The method requires no actual reading. Instead, students are instructed to rapidly fan the pages or press closed books directly to their foreheads. The financial toll is staggering. Franchises have expanded globally, charging anxious parents tuition fees that can reach up to $38,000 per child. These claims openly violate the established laws of cognitive science and neurobiology. You cannot absorb semantic meaning through dermal contact. They also fail basic physics, attempting to use microscopic quantum mechanics to explain macroscopic biological outcomes. The target demographic for these programs consists primarily of highly educated, affluent parents seeking every possible advantage for their children. This scam forces us to look beyond the bizarre fanning of pages and examine how our own cognitive architecture can be weaponized against us. Standard reading research caps typical adult reading speeds at around 200 to 400 words per minute. This diagram outlines the physiological pathway of reading. Data flows from visual input at the eyes through coordinated optical saccades to the visual cortex at the back of the brain. From there, linguistic decoding occurs as the signals move into the left temporal and frontal lobes. Working memory creates a strict bottleneck in this structure. When input speed exceeds processing capacity, semantic integration is entirely destroyed. Quantum speed reading claims to bypass the visual cortex entirely. They suggest a direct line of activation from the forehead straight to the pineal gland in the midbrain. Promoters claim this midbrain activation allows instant comprehension of unknown foreign languages. But language acquisition strictly requires active linguistic decoding, extended exposure, and practice. Passive contact with text yields zero comprehension. Physical proximity to printed text cannot replace semantic processing. The biological architecture simply does not allow it. To mask these biological impossibilities, promoters hijack complex terminology, using words like quantum, vibrations, and higher sensory perception. True quantum mechanics is the behavioral study of subatomic particles at incredibly microscopic scales. Applying this to a textbook represents a profound boundary failure. Macroscopic objects do not exhibit quantum behaviors that can transmit semantic data. Ink dried on paper lacks the physical capacity to emit translatable thought vibrations through the air. This tactic is known as science washing, co-opting complex scientific vocabulary purely as a marketing label to exploit public fascination. Leading quantum physicists have actively denounced these commercial developments, explicitly categorizing them as groundless nonsense. In this context, the word quantum is completely decoupled from actual physics. It acts exclusively as a hypnotic buzzword designed to bypass rational scrutiny. If these claims violate basic physics and biology, why do thousands of educated parents buy in? This diagram maps our cognitive vulnerabilities, starting with a central root node, the illusion of knowledge. This bias causes individuals to overestimate their understanding of complex phenomena. Operating under this illusion makes people highly susceptible to simplistic, intuitively appealing explanations for difficult concepts. This leads to the paradox of misplaced trust, where a high general trust in science actually increases a person's belief in pseudoscience. This specific vulnerability triggers when fraudulent claims are heavily masked with scientific jargon, authoritative branding, and impressive graphs. We call this epistemological naivete, the flawed belief that knowledge is absolute and handed down by authority, rather than tested via evidence. Scammers exploit this exact naivete by mimicking the aesthetic of science. They utilize clinical settings, medical equipment, and official certificates to manufacture credibility. In these cases, a generalized respect for scientific authority functions as the specific entry point for the scam. This exploitation thrives on the cultural catalyst of jiwa, a relentless parental drive pushing children into hyper-competitive extracurricular enhancement. Acute parental anxiety and the desperation for an elite academic edge disable a person's baseline skepticism. Promoters leverage exclusivity. The exorbitant price tags artificially signal high value and elite status to anxious buyers. Further validation comes through manufactured social proof. Highly orchestrated public demonstrations feature large groups of children appearing to succeed simultaneously. The rapid franchise expansion, modeled heavily on multi-level marketing, creates a powerful false illusion of institutional success. Once tens of thousands of dollars are spent, the sunk cost fallacy takes hold. Parents are psychologically forced to defend the non-existent results to avoid intense cognitive dissonance. A persistent regulatory gap seals the trap. Consumers assume that the mere physical existence of these training centers implies tacit government approval. Quantum speed reading thrives because extreme emotional desperation demands a magical shortcut that reality simply cannot provide. We are left with a massive cognitive scam, an absolute physical impossibility sustained entirely by a perfectly engineered psychological trap. Directly contradicting a victim's false belief with facts usually fails. It triggers defensive entrenchment rather than sudden realization. This flow diagram illustrates a more effective systemic defense: prebunking. It intercepts and neutralizes a manipulation technique long before it reaches the consumer. Prebunking is the process of proactively warning populations about specific manipulation heuristics and commercial red flags. Key red flags include a heavy reliance on pseudo-neuroscience buzzwords, proprietary medical conditions, and using personal testimonials to replace empirical data. Secondary warnings involve urgency marketing, promises of massive results from minimal effort, and extreme price points calibrated to signal false seriousness. The sheer scale of the quantum speed reading industry proves that superficial science literacy, knowing scientific terms without understanding their mechanics, is completely insufficient. Modern education must pivot. Merely teaching isolated scientific facts leaves people vulnerable. We have to aggressively teach the rigorous methodology of evidence evaluation. Resilient trust anchors belief to peer review, reproducibility, and critical evaluation, rather than the assertions of self-proclaimed authorities. To protect our communities from the next inevitable scam, we must stop worshiping the vocabulary of science and start demanding the proof of its process.